Hello and welcome back to another math lesson with Mrs. Kempf. Today we are going to be looking at order of operations again, but today notice it says involving decimals. So you do have an LOT to begin with. So please pause the video and try the LOT. Make sure you have your notes page. The LOT is there as well. And when you are finished, resume the video to check your answers. All right, welcome back. Let's go ahead and check our answers here for this LOT. The first one, I know it says number 11, but the first one, the square root of 50. I need to figure out where that would fall on the number line by estimating the square root. I know, sorry about that. I know that the square root of 50 is close to the square root of 49. And also close to the square root of 64, and I know that those answers are 7 and 8. So I see that there are 2 points between the 7 and the 8 on my number line. So how do I choose? Well, when I look at the square root of 50, I notice that it is definitely closer to 49 than 64. So I think that it needs to be closer to the answer of 7, which leads me to believe that number 11 is E. So square root of 50 is letter E. As I continue on here, square root of 103. I know that the square root of 100 is 10, and this is a little bit above that, and I see that there is only 1 point on my number line that is a little above 10. So this is 103, letter A. In number 13, the third one, the square root of 62. I again see that that is between 49 and 64. However, this one is a lot closer to the 8. So this is going to be letter D for me, square root of 62. When I look at my last two here, square root of 90, I know that that is between square root of 81, which is 9, and square root of 100, which is 10. So as I look at my number line, there is only 1 point between 9 and 10, and that is letter C. Which means my last one, square root 37, is letter B. And I can verify that by knowing the square root of 36, the answer is 6. And 37 is just a little above 36. So my answer is just a little bit above the number 6. So let's get started on our actual order of operations for today. We are solving or evaluating multi-step order of operations problems involving decimals. So once again, you should already have a notes page from your LOT, but please make sure you still have that and continue to take notes and fill in the blanks as we go along here today. When we are looking at order of operations, we have the PEMDAS that helps us remember the order. The P is for parentheses. E is for exponents, MD is multiplying and dividing, and adding and subtracting comes last. And there is a thinking question. There is a thinking question at the bottom of this, and it is also on your notes page, so please make sure you answer it there. Why are the M and the D and the A and the S written side by side instead of separated like the P and the E? So why are multiplying and dividing, adding and subtracting written the way they are in my PEMDAS model instead of the P and the E separated? So go ahead and jot down some thoughts, pause the video, jot those down. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you got some thoughts down. The main thought that I want you to remember while you are looking at why they are written the way they are, the multiplying and the dividing happen from left to right. It is extremely important to remember that if there is dividing that comes first in the problem, you have to work from left to right. Multiplying does not always come first, and the same applies for adding and subtracting. If they're subtracting before adding, we must work from left to right. So let's actually see what this looks like in action. As we work today, we might still see some integer rules. We're going to see decimals today. We might see some new grouping symbols that we haven't seen before or haven't seen in a while. We have parentheses. We sometimes have brackets. and other grouping symbols as well, so just watch for those. So as I get started here, first looking at my parentheses. So as I look at parentheses, I see these grouping symbols here. So I know that I'm going to start in that. Within that, I see another set of parentheses. Okay, however, there's nothing actually specific to solve in those parentheses. So once I'm looking at those first initial grouping symbols, now I can look at the rest of my order of operations to solve within. I see an exponent, adding, and subtracting. So within those three items, I know the exponents come first. So I have to do 1.5 squared, which would be 1.5 times 1.5. And as I do that, 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 2 is 7. Placeholder 0. 5 times 1 is 5, and 1 times 1 is 1. And this becomes 1.8 times bracket 2.25 plus 5.8 minus 2.2. Okay, so I still have those grouping symbols, so I'm going to continue to simplify within. And I see adding and subtracting, so I'm going to work from left to right. So 2.25 plus 5.8, and I'm going to remember that as I write down that adding problem to line up my decimals, and when I add those together I get 8.05. I still have the minus 2.2. So now I need to do 8.05 minus 2.2, again still lining up my decimals. I am doing my work off to the side here. And also running out of room. I did skip that first one on the screen itself, but we'll make sure to show this here. So when I'm doing this subtracting, 5 minus 0 is 5. I need to borrow for this. 10 minus 2 is 8, and 7 minus 2 is 5. So I have 5.85 left in my brackets times 1.8. I have simplified everything in my brackets or my parentheses, so I'm done with that. I do not see any other exponents, so now I'm looking at multiplying and dividing. This is multiplying, so I'm going to do 1.8 times 5.85. And when I do that, I end up with 10.53. All right, let's take a look at the next one. First, looking in the parentheses. So as I look in the parentheses, I again see multiple operations, but it is all adding and subtracting, so I work from left to right. 4.5 plus 8.2. Five plus 2 is 7. 8 plus 4 is 12. Okay, so now I have 12.7 minus 9.8 in those parentheses still. So then I have 17 minus 8 because I had to borrow, and that equals 9. 11 minus 9 is 2. So in the parentheses I have 2.9 that has an exponent on the outside, divided by 2.9. So I do not have anything else in my parentheses to simplify. So now I'm moving on to exponents, and I have to do 2.9 times 2.9. And as I do that, 2.9 times 2.9 gives me 8.41. And now I have to finally divide by 2.9 to get my answer. 8.41 divided by 2.9 actually gives me 2.9. On the third one, again, please make sure you are writing these down on your notes paper. On the third one, I still have lots of grouping symbols, exponents, dividing, adding, subtracting, so I need to make sure I'm still following that order of operations. Starting in my grouping symbols here on the right-hand side, and in those grouping symbols on the right-hand side, I actually see that I have an exponent, so that is my starting place. I need to do 1.4 squared, which is 1.4 times 1.4. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. 4, 1. 2 digits up here, so 2 digits of my answer. So 3.8 plus 1.96. And when I add those, I end up with 5.76 from my grouping symbols. And now, as I continue with my problem, I've simplified my parentheses, nothing else to do there. No exponents left in my problem. Any multiplying or dividing, I'm looking at that from left to right. I do see dividing here, so I'm going to do 7.2 divided by 5.76, and that actually ends up giving me 1.25. So now I have 1.3 minus 1.25. Have to borrow. And it ends up as 0.05. All right, so I know that this might take some time. I know that I am doing some of my work off to the side and even some of it rather quickly, but please take your time. I'm asking you to pause the video, take your time, and when you are ready to check your answer, please press play and check your work. All right, welcome back. So let's take a look here at what we end up with. First, looking at parentheses, and as I look at parentheses, the one on the left has nothing to simplify on the inside, so I'm going to move to the parentheses on the right-hand side of my problem. And in there, I see adding and subtracting, so I'm going to work from left to right. 7.1 plus 6.2. That ends up with 13.3. But now I have to minus 5.3 from that to continue simplifying from inside my parentheses. 3 minus 3 is 0. 13 minus 5 is 8. So I have 1.8 squared times 8 as I simplify parentheses here. And now that that is done, now I look at my exponents, which I do have. So I have 1.8 times 1.8. As I multiply that out, it gives me 3.24. And I know that I'm going to multiply that by 8, so I'm going to go ahead and write it up and down so I can do that. 8 times 4 gives me 32. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 3 is 19. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 1 is 25. 2 decimal digits in my problem, so 2 in my answer. My final answer is 25.92. As you finish up with this lesson for today, remember our objective was that you would evaluate multi-step order of operations problems. As you finish, you should show the notes paper to the teacher and verify that it is complete, and they will give you the practice page. I encourage you to take your time. I understand that these decimal problems definitely take a lot more time than when we work with integers, so take your time as you work on your practice page. Thanks for watching.